Mr. David Graydon, how goes it?
Well, not bad, not bad. As I said, I've been following that ostrich story so closely. Sometimes I feel like I'm there, but it's a good thing I'm not because things are so confusing and chaotic. I think I'm actually doing more in terms of getting the story out here in Ottawa than I would be on scene because there's just so many logistical problems and whatnot. But anyway, just got off the line with Katie not half an hour ago for an update and whatnot. So we can talk about that when you want to.
Right now, since you're on it, let's just talk about it. Ostrich BC Ostrich Farm update. You go for it.
Yeah, it's incredible what's going on here, Nico, because I don't want to compare it to, huge historical events where people knew something was going on, but they did nothing. But in a smaller scale, that's exactly what this is like, because every day we know ostriches are disappearing from this farm. Are they vanishing like a magician under a magician's wand? No, but something's happening to them. And we believe that the CFIA has moved in a blender, and I don't mean the kind you make milkshakes with. This is this is a technology that's been in use now with the CFIA and other groups that are out there just killing animals under the guise of protecting human health and animal health because they believe they're infected with avian flu or they don't give a damn if they are or not. But these are huge blenders where and animals as big as cows are being put in these blenders and ground up. And I'm not making this up. Sounds like science fiction. And they're being liquefied, and the remains are removed, probably usually through a septic tank system or through the sewer. And this is absolutely shocking when I found out this technology has been in use. We saw one of these devices hauled onto the farm. There's photographs of this. We've got photographic evidence of it. And I tracked down exactly what we saw in the photograph being trucked into the site. And sure enough, it's one of these industrial blenders that is used to hydrocremate is the word. I've never run into this before. And this is what they call the process because they instead of reducing the carcass to ashes, it reduces it essentially to liquid. But this is what we believe is going on. Can we confirm it in terms of evidence, in terms of the affluence being found, tested? Not yet, but reports every day from people who are observing things off the farm, and people are up or being woken up in the wee small hours of the morning on this farm with these septic tanks being trucked off the site and this weird sound. And I put a video up the other day on my show from one observer who said it sounded like a piece of steak being put in a blender, and you have that grinding sound, and it's almost frightening. He said to hear this, and a lot of other people have heard this, and every instance when they think to record it, the sound is gone. So I'm asking people, and I'll ask them on your show here as well, if there's anybody at the farm. I know a lot of the of Katie's supporters watch this show now on Wednesday night, and I'll say it again: if anybody is out tonight, put your iPhone on, put your smartphone on, record it, and send it to me tomorrow. Katie will be on my show on Friday again to discuss this incredible maneuver, if you will. But the observers are on a hill all day long, tracking how many ostriches. The last number that I received was 284. Now you recall when this all began, the farm said 399. We know one died of we believe because it was of neglect. But the CFIA came back with an official report last week saying, well, we believe there's between 300 and 330 ostriches remaining on the farm. Well, what the hell happened to the other 68 to 98 ostriches? Why are they using that figure? And can't they count? Are these people so incompetent they can't count 330 ostriches? They have to give you a range? Because the observers on this farm are giving us an exact number, the latest being 284. So if this is actually happening, this is a crime because it's in direct violation of the Supreme Court order to stop this culling and just look after these birds in terms of feeding, giving them water, and making sure they have bedding at night. And that and if any animal is sick, they're supposed to bring a veterinarian in. That's what they're supposed to be concerning with, not to getting on with the job as they're looking at it. But I still look at this as a huge scandal. It's just incredible what's going on here. And anybody who has two eyes and two ears can tell that the population of ostriches is declining every bloody day and every week. And the Supreme Court is not expected now to decide to whether or not they're going to hear this case until late November, maybe December. I don't think the birds have that long to live. Now that's an extended sort of report of what's going on here, but I don't know if this farm is going to survive. The object here seems to be to inject as much misery into the situation as possible. They keep people up all hours of the night with the noise from these trucks going in, moving material out at 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and never allowing the farm to even count the ostriches, bring anybody in to do that. And certainly they're still maintaining that they'll never test these ostriches to see if they actually have any evidence of H5N1 avian influenza. And we all know at this point, this has just been a huge lie. There's, these birds aren't sick. If they are sick today, it's the CFIA, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, that's made them sick. And I have seen video after video of these goons lassoing, poking the ostriches with something that looks like potentially a needle, chasing these birds, harassing these birds, corralling them into this death pit area because it's almost as if they're just preparing to get rid of the last number. And I have never seen a government agency so immune to basic law because they are contravening animal cruelty laws. They're contravening everything that the Supreme Court said they're supposed to be doing for these animals during the stay. The RCMP will not charge them. Why? Because the RCMP is complicit in this operation. They're protecting the CFIA. They're getting rid of their trash. We talked about this last week. They're literally moving their trash off the site, sending it to another small business in town, then getting it from there to a landfill site. And they're obviously complicit in the movement of this waste material, which I believe is waste. It's not just the crap from the porta potties. It's more here. There's more here going on, and everybody at the farm knows it. But we can't prove it because they won't let people get close to the operation. It's a clandestine operation being conducted at night largely, and nobody is filming it, nobody's documenting it because they're making it virtually impossible to do so.
Thanks for the update, David. Absolutely, it never ends, right? It just never ends. And one of the comments was saying that it seems like they're gonna be doing the calling no matter what before the Supreme Court's decision, and there it seems, at least by what you're saying, that that's what they're doing right now. So they're not waiting for the decision itself. There might not be much birds or many birds left by the time the Supreme Court makes a judgment. But I wanted to address another of the comments here, because that's one of my regulars. Trevor Benson, but the birds are clearly more important, because he started listing, he's like, David's still talking about the birds, and he then listed a bunch of other things like maids, kids disappearing that are, uh, he believes more important. And I'm not saying there are, I'm not saying there aren't, but Trevor, the reason we keep on talking about the birds is because it's happening everywhere. That's the thing. Like, government is going after our rights. It doesn't matter that it's through bills trying to censor us. It doesn't matter that it's through the CFIA. They're literally attacking farmers. Then you talked about MAID, same thing. Like, there's an article that came out. I need to do more research into it, but saying that the veterans are being offered MAID instead of regular care. So MAID is everywhere. I don't know if you heard about the heart that was harvested after somebody died in somebody literally made it themselves, ended up in the US. And a heart, people don't know this, but a heart in the US goes for about $1 million. That's the price of a healthy heart. So somehow we have organ harvesting going on through MAID that ends up in the US. So Trevor, I get you, but it's just we're attacking it all. It seems to be coming from all angles. The government's going after us every way that they can. It's just, this is just another
Yeah,
example. And
that's
if you guys want to hear more, you said that you have Katie from the farm coming on your show on Friday, right?
yeah. 11 o'clock because it's a little early for us sometimes on because of the Pacific time zone. But yeah, I would say the same to Trevor. It's not that I have an obsession with ostriches. It's not that I have an obsession with this farm. It's not that I'm crazy. I'm a crazy animal rights activist. I've certainly never done that. But I do believe farmers have a right to their private property, to their farm, to their livestock. And if a government agency can get away with this, defying the Supreme Court and just doing whatever the hell they want, then people are next. And that's the point. It's not just about ostriches. It's never been about this. And Katie is the first person to say it's not just about my farm, my family, my ostriches. No, it's about not, and it's not even about farmers, just farmers. It's about all Canadians at the mercy of a ravenous federal government that will do whatever the hell it wants to advance a political agenda. And this one, of course, is rooted in big pharma. It's rooted in vaccines. It's rooted in a complete dismissal of herd immunity because they don't want to hear about natural remedies. They want to hear about what's going to cost billions of dollars with vaccines. So that's what this is about. And if you think it can't, if you think it can't escalate, it's done that in so many other countries that were once relatively free, but they became totalitarian states where the unthinkable suddenly became practice. And that's what's happening here. Of course, I'm concerned about MAID. I did an interview this morning on the Mark Petroni show out of Mississauga. I go on every week to talk about current events with Mark. He's become a very good friend. And he asked me about MAID for veterans because I'm a veteran myself. I served in the Canadian Armed Forces as an officer. I was overseas, and I'm hearing increasing number of stories. This is not new, by the way, that veterans, because they tend to ask for something for their service, if they're injured, if they're sick, they tend to think, well, maybe the government should look after me to some degree. If my injury and my sickness is a result of the deployment the government sent me on, or the service I did for my country, for my government, maybe the government should at least look after me. But what does the liberal regime say? No, we're not going to look after you. We're going to offer you MAID. And it's not just veterans, Nico. I have done so many
No.
stories, a couple for the post millennial in the last 6 months, documenting how people who can't get operations in this country because it takes a year and a half sometimes to get a cancer operation. So the health system, and this particular one that comes to mind was in British Columbia. The BC health system said, hey, sorry, by the time you get your operation, you're going to be dead. So
Mm-hmm.
here's the good news. You're eligible for MAID.
Yep.
So this particular woman out of Victoria, she said, screw you. She went to Ohio, got her operation. She's living cancer-free today.
Yep.
Had she listened to the Canadian government, she would have she would have self-suicide. I probably shouldn't use that word here, but she would have self-deleted. Let's put
All
it that
good.
way. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and you see it. I did the calculation. I went through the 10 main causes of death in Canada as per reported on Statistic Canada's website. And if you look at the amount of maids that has happened over the years, because maid in Statistic Canada is different than a suicide. They don't calculate them into the same column. So if you calculate that maid is suicide, the third main reason of death, the third main cause of death, should I say, in Canada, has become suicide. Third. It's insane. It's absolutely insane how MAID is changing everything. And it is in the plans of the Liberal Party to actually change the legislation so that mentally ill people can access MAID. So you don't need to be dying anymore like the requirements right now, but people with just mental disability. And they've even introduced the idea of mature minors. Talk about a dystopian term. You can't be a mature minor. You just can't.
No,
That's two
no.
opposition. You can't use those two words to describe the same person, but they eventually they have pushed the idea of mature minors with mental illnesses. So literally under 18 individuals that could commit suicide through MAID because they have a mental illness. Everybody has a mental illness under when you're a teenager. Sorry.
At some
Sorry.
time or another, yeah.
That's part of the deal. You're going to be a
Oh,
psycho for a few years. It's part of the deal.
addicts and alcoholics are on that list too, because they become socially undesirable. But we saw the same thinking in Germany in the 1930s. You have to be careful how you describe that. Well, I think YouTube's getting a little better about that actually. When the euthanasia program under
Yep.
the Nazi regime, it was targeted against people who were considered, in the words of that state, useless eaters. That meant people with mental disabilities, physical disabilities, anyone who wasn't considered to be perfect. And that includes a lot of people who weren't part of the club, the Aryan club. Well, there was euthanasia, and nobody even asked you, of course. But that's how. Where are we going in this country? They're asking you, but when is it going to come to a point where they stop asking and they just say, "Hey, you're too old. You're not worth the money to keep you alive. You're not worth the time and the effort. We're going to give you euthanasia because, well, I'm sorry, that's the policy." That's the same thing we're hearing on Edgewood, BC, at the farm. Not because it's based in science, not because it's based in rationality. It's the policy. So if you don't like the policy, that's tough. We don't care if it happens to agree with the laws or not. That's the policy. We're going to go through with it. And MAID is one of the most insidious programs we ever introduced in Canada. And much like abortion, it's a slippery slope because it never ends. You keep enlarging the number of people. Just like in Canada, we have abortion, unlimited abortion on demand till the child is born. And then in some cases, we have documented cases of infanticide occurring because there's no parameters and it just gets worse. It is a slippery slope. I remember talking about this on a totally unrelated issue, maybe a decade or so ago. And people said, "Oh, don't use that term, slippery slope. That there's no slippery slope. We'll know when we've gone far enough." And of course, no,
Oh
we won't.
yeah, sure.
No, we won't.
Sure we will. Sir, we will.
No.
You're seeing it
Yeah.
right now. It takes less time. You can get approved for MAID within 3 months. Yet to see a psychologist provided by our healthcare system, not on the private sector, takes 3 to 6 months or more, depending in which province that you're in. So it takes less time to get approved to kill yourself than it does seeing a psychologist. And you're going to tell me that the slippery slope, we haven't been down that slippery slope, that we haven't passed that point where we really need to question ourselves. And I don't know if you know the guy, a guy by the name of Seth Gruber. He's probably the one of the foremost world authority on abortion, and he's very very pro life. He's a Christian out of the U.S. But he made me realize something, and the statistics is basically the same in Canada. But a third of his generation, he's 32, 33, a third of his generation is missing because of abortion. Like, I've looked at the numbers in Canada, it's over 100,000 abortion last year alone. And if, however you feel about it, I'm pro-life, no questions, no questions about it. But however you feel about abortion, if you look at the numbers, it's anywhere somewhere between 95 to 99% of abortion. So let's say 95 for the sake of argument of abortions are done by women that are healthy.
Yeah.
95%. The number's closest to 99, but let's say 95%. So only 5% of the abortions out there are used because of medical issues. Either there's a problem with the fetus, or there's a problem with the mother that she could die if she continues. There's a problem with the pregnancy. But 95% of them are used out of convenience. That's the word I'm going to use. Convenience.
Yeah.
So we have a massive problem where we don't value life. Just this week in Longueuil, it's a town right next to Montreal, just south of Montreal. It's the second time in 3 weeks that they find a newborn abandoned that dies. So one of them was left on a random people's staircase. The baby died. They found one this week. It left in a school shelter, not a bus shelter. Just left there. The newborn died. I'm looking at my 3.5 months old. I was reading the article as I'm literally watching my son sleep on the monitor, and I'm like, you know what they said in the article? That at this point, the woman needs help. Hey, screw your fucking need. You're not a victim, woman. The child is a victim, not you. You literally murdered a child. You murdered a child, and the police was more worried about her and the psychological help that she needs, like she's a victim in all this. So it doesn't matter that you're looking at the birds, it doesn't matter that you're looking at maid, it doesn't matter that where you're looking, it seems that we do not value life at all, and victims have become lesser than the criminals that commit the crime. It's absolutely insane. It's up. So that slippery slope is the it's the perfect
Yeah.
expression, because we're way down that slippery slope. And it's
And
covered in oil, and I'm looking at trying to claw back up that hill, and it ain't working.
no, but you listen to prominent liberal cabinet ministers throughout the years standing up in question period and saying that abortion is in the Constitution. It's in the Charter of Rights. And of course, it's bullshit. It's not in the Constitution. No reference to it. Nobody would have even have considered putting it in the Constitution when that was repatriated in 1982. But they talk about it as a foundational human right, like it's something to be proud of if you have an abortion, because you're actually demonstrating your human rights in Canada, that this has something to do with your personal liberty. And people who support abortion used to say it should be safe, legal, and rare. Now, I remember Bill Clinton saying this. Even Hillary Clinton said this at one time. That has been completely reversed to the point where abortion should be celebrated, and it shouldn't be rare. Everybody should get in on the act because it's liberating for women. Talk to women who have had abortions, even the ones who were pro-choice or pro-abortion, however you want to put that. And it was traumatic. Very few of them say, "Oh, it was a great time. It was a great experience." They have remorse for that act for the rest of their life. They deal with that. They struggle with that. And it was not liberating. It was not a way of demonstrating their personal liberty. It was a horrible decision they made, and so many of them regret it today. But stop saying that this is a good thing for women to do. And even if you think women have the right to abort a fetus, don't pretend that they all feel good about it. And that is just the ultimate insult to all of this. And Canada has become a death cult with abortion on demand and
Hmm.
made. And as we see now, these roving death squads killing literally millions of chickens, killing sheep, killing cows across the country based on they might have had a disease, so we're going to stamp them all out. And we all know this. The political, what's going on here politically is it's so beyond anything about the vaccines or avian influenza or sickness in animals. It's about adherence to big pharma, and it's about ultimately taking away our food sources in this country. I really believe that we're going down the road
Yep.
where we're going to be left eating insects, and that, of course, the WEF philosophy. I always tell people, if you think I'm talking nonsense about where the World Economic Forum wants people to go, look at their website. It's still there. And it's not like they said, whoops, this is embarrassing. We have to pull this down. It's still
Yeah.
there. All of this stuff is still there. That's what they believe in.
Don't even just look at the WEF. Go see the WHO. Since the 90s, they've been talking that they want a 90% world depopulation. And you know that that agenda is not going to be done through weapons. They cannot stand against us. We're too many people. But how are they going to do it? Promote abortion is one of them. Have people kill their own children. Then you don't think vaccination, the last COVID experiment, you don't think that's going to play a role into a depopulation agenda? The fact that it changes your DNA and you can pass that down to your children? There's so many ways that they've been look at eat the bugs, made all beautiful ways to get people to unalive themselves. You don't even need, just give them the option and convince them that it's good for them, indoctrinate them to believe that it's good. And yet it's right on their website. The last Bilderberg meeting that took place a few months back, what's the name of that woman? The woman that just quit. She's one of the ministers that just oh man, one of the worst ministers ever. How did I forget her name? She was with Trudeau before. She just took a job to be an envoy to Ukraine. What's the
Oh,
name of that
oh,
damn woman?
oh.
Damn, what's the name of that
Ah,
damn woman?
isn't that
Man, I'm
funny? We
drawing a
talk about
blank,
her
right?
every day. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
Freeman, Freeland. Yes.
yes, Freeland.
Fr- so Freeland was
Christia
at the
Freeland.
Bill
Christia Freeland.
Christia Freeling. She was at the Bilderberg convention, the same as our finance minister. And if you go pull out their main topics of conversation, you know what one of them was? Mass immigration and depopulation. This is one of the many subjects that the most powerful people on the planet are speaking about behind closed doors. So yes, I agree with you. There's a globalist agenda, and clearly Mark Carney's aboard because he is a self-declared globalist. Talking about this, there's one of the things that I wanted to ask you. Talking about globalism, did you hear the rumor about the EV tariffs being pulled from China? That Carney is going to announce that because he's in obviously right now. If you've been following everybody, if everybody's been following their what's happening with Carney, but Carney is in Asia right now trying to find deals instead of dealing with our biggest ally in the US. He's trying to find deals, and it's rumored that he will lift the EV tariffs, the 100% EV tariffs that are on Chinese EV light vehicles right now. Have you heard the rumor?
Yeah, I think that would be great news for farmers because their canola has been slapped with 100% tariff, and that for a lot of farmers right now, that's keeping them alive. Is canola is keeping because they have been so hit in the last 10 years of regulations and the carbon tax that canola is keeping them alive. It's also an admission. If Carney goes through, it's an admission nobody's buying electric vehicles, and all of the electric vehicle plants in Canada are going under or are converting back to the regular vehicles, and because nobody wants these things. It's been the Canadian government under Trudeau invested. Why? No, why did I say that word? spent taxpayer money, billions of taxpayer dollars, and they took it from the CPP. They stole money from the Canadian pension plan to fund EV plants in Ontario and Quebec. This is an absolute outrage. But here's an admission: we stole the money, we subsidized these plants, and now we're admitting nobody wants to buy these damn vehicles because the tariff means nothing. The tariff means absolutely nothing. People don't want to buy Chinese or North American EVs, and it says so much.
You know, if you, I was breaking down the number because I have a different view of what's going on than you do. Because obviously, that's what they're saying, that the reason they put 100% tariffs on the canola oil is because of the tariffs we put on the EVs. But what's interesting about this is if you actually start digging into it, it could be a massive, massive corruption opportunity for Brookfield, because one of the things that people don't understand is I digged into the numbers this morning. So on average in Canada right now, our car manufacturing can handle about 50,000 EV light duty cars or vehicles every year. As
Hmm?
per, and most of them ends up in the US. They're not even kept here because obviously EVs makes no sense in Canada when you lose more than a half of your range because it's cold outside 6 to 7 months of the year. But in order to meet the EV mandates, the 2035 EV mandates, we will need to be able to produce 2 million vehicles a year because that's about what's sold year after year when it comes to just regular cars. Like all cars to put together, normal gas cars is about 2 million a year. We can produce 50,000 right now, and the best estimates that I could find is 200 to 300,000 for before 2030. That's the estimate that they're putting. We could boost our car manufacturing to 2 to 300, which is literally 90%, give or take 85 to 90% of what would be needed to meet the demand. Where it gets interesting is this would be the perfect opportunity for Mr. Mark Carney to meet the 2035 mandate by opening up our borders or imports to Chinese vehicles, because they do produce very good vehicles. If you've been looking at what they're capable of doing compared to the crap that's manufactured here, it's absolutely two different worlds, and they're cheap, 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 cheap as hell to buy too. But what's interesting is that most people don't know this, but Brookfield is not invested in EV cars itself, but they own companies that specialize in building the charging grid for EV vehicles. So putting together the charging station and implementing the connection between all those charging stations. They call it charging as a service is how their product is called. They also specialize in EV batteries and storage, which if you look at a Tesla company is not a car company. It's a battery technology company that used cars to develop battery technology. So they own battery storage technology. They also specialize, as you know, in renewable energy, hydroelectricity, wind, and wind. What's the other one? Wind and solar. So they basically can open the floodgate to Chinese cars, EV cars, build the grid that's going to be needed in order to charge all those cars, sell the idea to Canadians that this will create great middle class job. We will be able to boost our economy again, and Brookfield will make a shit ton of money because their companies know how to build the infrastructure needed in order to meet the 2035 EV mandates. And I was looking at their stocks yesterday. You know how much the stock has grown? The Brookfield Asset Management stock since Carney was elected in April. It went from $44 to $66 within the span of not 6 months, just under 6 months. It gained 33% in values. And if you guys remember, Mark Carney owns over 400,000 stock options They were worth about 6.7 million when he put them in a blind trust before trying to become prime minister. It's estimated that they're worth over 10 million today. How is that not a massive case of corruption? How are
Yeah,
people
that's
not talking about this? Like, how am I the only doofus that keeps on talking about this? It's insane. Absolutely insane. Like, what is happening in Canada that we're so oblivious to what our prime minister is doing? 103 conflict of interest, no consequences, zero.
no, and exactly. And I'm hoping that the Parliamentary Finance Committee can have a look at this in a greater degree and bring in the CEO of Brookfield and the chief of staff to Mark Carney because it's not he's worth a hell of a lot more than 12 million dollars. I mean, he's worth God only knows what he's worth because he has enterprises around the world. They're all
Yep.
integrated. The tentacles go everywhere. It's fascinating to see just how tied in Mark Carney is to global finance. This is an extremely wealthy man, and
Oh yeah.
he is the ultimate
Oh yeah.
crony capitalist. And he has used his positions, all appointed until he was actually elected as a member of parliament and prime minister, to enlarge his fortune. And this might be a good segue into another issue we're talking about tonight. He's done it again with Brookfield being a part of an $80 billion nuclear reactor program
Mm-hmm.
in the States, working with Westinghouse and Cameco. And I said this on the show today. I had Jeffrey Rath of the Alberta Prosperity Project. We were not talking about Donald Trump that much, but I said we're talking about corruption in the government today,
Mm-hmm.
which Jeff, as a leading proponent of Alberta independence, says is one of the most significant factors in Albertans deciding or not deciding to vote for independence in a referendum next year. I said, well, why do you think Mark Carney, after all this elbows up BS during the election campaign, every time he's in the presence of Donald Trump, he's virtually on bended knee. He is praising Donald Trump as a transformational president, as a great man. Why do you think that is? And we just found out today because Brookfield has got a government contract with the United States government. And the corruption is just incredible. And yet, the national media allows him this huge degree of hypocrisy to get away with the posturing. He has done, and I said to Jeff today, I said, even if you agree with Mark Carney's ideology, which is basically corporatist or fascist, you have to look at his job performance and say he's done a piss poor job. He hasn't delivered on anything he's promised to
Nope.
deliver. He's helped sabotage the trade agreement. I know we'll get to that later. The trade agreement, as Doug Ford has, he's done nothing except introduce censorship and surveillance bills
Yep.
in a degree that even Justin Trudeau didn't imagine possible. But there's three of them in front of the House right now. Hope we have an election. That's another thing we can discuss later. Hope we have
That
an
would
election
scrap them,
because
eh?
if we don't, there's
That
a
would scrap.
fourth one coming. Yeah,
But that's another thing worth mentioning. I was talking about that last week. If on November 4th there is a rejection of the budget, that means dissolution of parliament, and those bills that are tabled would get scrapped. So
yeah.
C2, C8, C9 would get scrapped. I'm hoping for an election, not just. I don't believe that they would lose. Unfortunately, I think Canadians are so brainwashed that they probably end up voting for the Liberals again, even if I can trust, although I don't trust our voting system. Clearly, what happened in Terrebonne, where they said, yeah, it doesn't matter that there was vote that were not counted, it's not relevant. The point in the matter is that those bills would be scrapped. That and there is a good, it would be good at least. in that
Yeah,
optics.
it
But
would
you
be
know
good.
what's
That's
interesting too? I don't know if you heard about this. So we're talking about the EV mandates and the EV, the lifting the EV tariff, how it would benefit Brookfield. We're talking about an $80 billion partnership to build nuclear plants in the US, something that Carney would never do in Canada because he couldn't push his green agenda to all the woke people out there. Yet we had, I've interviewed one of the utmost specialists on climate change, and she was saying that basically the best technology out there is nuclear. The new technology that we have when it comes to nuclear power is about as green as it gets. But they won't build that in Canada, but they're building it in the US. And I don't know if you heard about that. I think it was last week. They Brookfield just bought $9 billion worth of pipelines in the US by acquiring the company Colonial Pipeline System, which stretches 5,500 miles between Texas and New York. So everything that motherfucker won't do in Canada, that he does everything possible to not do here, he's fucking doing in the US and getting rich doing it, because guess what? 95% of his investments are in the US. 95% of the stocks that he owns as a person are US companies. It's absolutely insane that that guy's not in jail. Absolutely
and
insane.
and if he had the gall, the unmitigated gall, to run an election campaign based on the United States being an existential threat and Donald Trump being part of that
Yep.
existential threat, when of course, as you said, he is so heavily invested in U.S. commerce that if that existential threat disappeared, Mark Carney would be a very poor man. And that it's incredible how he got away with that and continues to get away with the rhetoric and the nonsense coming out of his mouth. But I find this to be mind-boggling corrupt. And the fact that we almost accept it as, well, yeah, that Carney, he sure knows, sure understands business. He knows how to get rich. He knows how to get rich by insider dealing. That's how he's made his wealth. And most of us will never have that opportunity to have that sort of inside information, to be on the inside track so you can make those investments and make that kind of money. Mark Carney's been doing it his entire life. And it's like I say, which Mark Carney do you want? Behind door number one, number two, or number three? Because he is very good at redesigning himself. He's a great chameleon politician. In the end, what does Mark Carney believe in? Believes in Mark Carney.
Money.
Believe, you
Money.
know, you know, that's
And not only
that's
that, but
basically
that guy had the audacity to tell a room of students last week that they need to be prepared to make more sacrifices. He
it.
has the audacity to tell Canadians, students that will probably never be able to own houses, that, you know what, as I get rich here, you guys will need to make more sacrifices. Be ready to make more sacrifices. Last thing I wanted, we have 8 minutes to go. I wanted to ask you what you thought of the Doug Ford NT tariff ads. And if you heard about the claim that, obviously we all know Mark Carney knew about the ads. He let them go because obviously it takes heat off of him to not be able to close a deal with Trump. So he loves that. If he can use Ford as a scapegoat, works for him. But it came out this week, and I can't remember the name of the former Conservative Party member, but she was saying on CTV News that the reason Carney let that fly is because he refused the last Trump deal, the last trade deal with Trump. He refused. And now Trump, you heard him say this week on his flight to Asia that, you know what, I don't care. I'm happy with the deal that we have with Canada, and whatever. I'm not going to talk to Carney anytime soon. But supposedly that Doug Ford's fiasco ads are hiding the fact that Carney refused the last deal with the US, and now we're probably looking at 2026 before we can get even a deal, maybe a shred of a deal with the US.
I think there's more to this than just Donald Trump not liking the Reagan ad. It didn't make sense to me at all because Doug Ford is actually quite correct. Ronald Reagan was a free trader. Every conservative politician, principled conservative politician in 1984, 85 was a free trader. Every conservative Republican was a free trader in that era. So Doug Ford is historically correct, but you can be right in the past. You can be right historically, but you can be goddamn wrong for the present. It was not the ad to put out. But as I say, I don't believe that was all there was to it because why was it directed so much at Mark Carney? I mean, I don't think he'll ever sit in the same room as Doug Ford. He can't stand Doug Ford. He considers him a pompous, grandstanding ass. But Mark Carney, of course, the two of them have been very close. Donald
Mhm.
Trump endorsed Mark Carney 3 times during the election. Just the day before election day, he again for the third time endorsed Mark Carney. The two of them go back a long time financially. They've had dealings, and why Donald Trump wanted Mark Carney to be prime minister. Well, we can debate that whether he thought he could steamroll him, whether it was because they had information on each other. I don't know. But why would he suddenly say, "I don't even want to meet with this guy right now"? Because I think he figures there's nothing worth talking about because Carney has rejected Trump's last offer. And I don't know what Carney hopes to gain from this, except once again, personal anger, personal riches. So we'll see what happens. But I don't for a minute think Donald Trump would have been this angry at Mark Carney because it was Doug Ford's ad. Carney might have approved it, but it was Doug Ford's ad. So yeah, there's a lot more to this than we know right now, and I think the rumors are probably true.
You know, one of the things worth mentioning on this as well is obviously there's a lot of speculations going on, but I strongly believe that Mark Carney is doing everything possible to destroy our relationship with the US because we are, I would argue, the number one untapped natural resources location in the world. Canada has the most untapped natural resources possible in the world. We have the power within 5 to 10 years to become an energy superpower, probably top three, minimum top five in the world. We don't, and over the past 10 years, we haven't. Since Carney got elected, I've been saying the same thing. He's here to finish what Trudeau started. What does that mean? He wants to destroy the economy. Why? Because think about it this way. He has no assets in Canada, personal assets in Canada when it comes to his investments. Why? Because there's no money to be made right now. So he's investing in a country, 95% of his money, the US, because it's booming now. What happens? When's the best time to buy to buy stocks? When the company is at the beginning about to make it big, or that you buy the dip, right? There's something wrong that happens into the company, but you know something good is soon to happen. And this is why I think there's two reasons. He wants us to become dependent on a one world government, and he wants to get rich doing it. What's the best way to get rich? Tank an economy and then start exploiting. When you're at the bottom, when the economy's tanked, start open up the projects that could save Canada and make sure that the companies that are assigned those projects, you own them. That is all Carney's doing. He's not here for 4 years. He's not here for 2 terms. He's here long enough to destroy the rest of Canada and get fucking rich doing it. That's what he's doing.
I think that's a stark assessment, but a very true one. That's he also wants to destroy the Canadian dollar, and that's
Yep.
he's well on the way to doing that. And it's going once again he will benefit from that because his assets are not in Canadian dollars, and this is all about his friendship in China. Where he wants China to be the leading economic engine in the world, and his friends in Europe. He wants to devalue the Canadian dollar. Anyway, he would like to devalue the U.S. dollar as well if he can do that in the process. So I
Oh
think
yeah.
we don't really know the machinations with Donald Trump are never exactly what they appear to be. There's always a dark underside to all of this activity.
I agree. David, once again, great conversation. I really enjoy our conversations on Wednesday evening, 6:30 to 7:30. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, make sure to follow David Crayden. What's your handle on your YouTube? And you're very strong on YouTube, X, and Facebook. So what's your handle everywhere?
It's Stand on Guard is the show. Creighton's Right is my channel, and you can also watch me on Rumble, which I think everybody eventually has got to get to Rumble because of it's a free speech platform. But yeah, it's Creighton's Right is the channel.
And if you want to follow me at real Nico Lagin, just like written right there. Enjoyed the show. Thanks for all the comments. And guys, we will catch you next week, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Until then, have a great night, guys.